something I just kind of
Sorry.
something that I just oh, it's fine. Something I just kind of run into. I mean, probably a lot of you or some of you used to shoot black and white film. You know, that was that stuff that came in little canisters. Some of you might remember it. But when we shot black and white film, what did we do? We used filters. Well, I was I was got into some forum or something, and somebody had posted something where they were using filters on digital cameras. And I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. So kind of jumped into that and going to kind of show you a little bit of what I came up with and go over a little bit of black and white, you know, what to look for and post processing, you know, kind of how my process is, what, you know, I go through for my black and white images. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And I am, you know, this is very casual. If you have a question, please, you know, jump in. My train leaves the track very often, so it doesn't take much. So feel free to jump in and ask questions. Let me know if you can see the screen.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we can.
Okay,
It's in there.
Go ahead and okay, black and white photography. And one thing that I've noticed about black and white photography is, and this was a good example, this image I happen to be, this was shot back in Maryland, the Eastern Shore of Maryland. I like to preface the Eastern Shore because we don't claim the Western Shore and all the crazies over there. Eastern Shore is very country, waterman, that type of folks. But I was actually down to my uncle's boatyard and I shot this image. And it's nothing spectacular at all. But in color, it was really nothing spectacular. Flipped it to black and white. And I started, you know, it's the textures. And that's the thing that has always drawn me to black and white, is how it enhances textures and stuff like that. So black and white photography is a classic form that most people enjoy because it's different than what we see with a naked eye. One of the best things about black and white photography is you can't take images. You can take images when you normally wouldn't. So, you know, unfortunately, we're kind of coming out of black and white season. Winter is perfect black and white season. We have, you know, dull skies. We have, you know, trees and stuff that don't have, you know, any color to them. So winter just is really made for black and white photography. And, you know, when you get a dreary, nasty day, that's a great day to go out and shoot black and white. If you have a day that, you know, the middle part of the day when you normally would sit around waiting for either early morning or late afternoon to go shoot color, go out and shoot black and white. Those are some of the neat things about black and white. So when can I take black and white photos? Well, dull white skies are perfect for black and white photography. Although I really enjoy what is called an active sky, something with clouds in it. And especially when you take those and you are able to do a long exposure and you get motion. And I'll show an image that I didn't take it, but something along those lines. Portraits, perfect for people with uneven skin tones. Whenever you want that classic portrait look. I had the honor of photographing a family that I've been photographing them for, geez, probably, I think we figured it out. It was close to 17 years. The oldest daughter, in fact, I just shot her engagement photos. I think when I first took her images, she was like 10 or 11 at the piano, and now she's getting married. But the neat thing was they had a aunt that was a PPA master photographer. She was absolutely incredible. And she'd taken all of these images of the family. Guess what they were in? Black and white. So as I started taking images of the family, I did a lot of them in black and white. And it was amazing how, even though the kids were older, or things looked a little bit different, they all blended together because they all had that classic look, that classic black and white portrait look. um, Grain or noise, if you want to add a little grain or noise into an image, it works. This particular image that's kind of in the background here was actually shot with Ilford 3200 film. I used to love that film when I shot weddings, and I kept one body with that Ilford 3200 for those low light situations. Bad white balance. There were times if I were shooting, brides in a room with incandescent lighting, and I'd get all this really bad white balance. Unfortunately, with shooting weddings, you don't have that time to go and do white balance checks and all that. You normally do it post processing. Well, sometimes it still doesn't look just right. Take those images, flip them to black and white, they look great. And uninteresting objects, things that might just not look good in color often look great in black and white. Most of my portraits that I do of me are in black and white. I'm just kidding. Now, it sounds like black and white is almost a fix for bad images. And while, yeah, that's kind of true, but to me, it's also just a different type of art form, a different way that you can move your photography to really get some interesting images. So some tips on shooting black and white. Number one, shoot in RAW. So one thing that you're going to do is, if you're shooting black and white images, you're going to take that image, take it into your editing software of choice, and you're going to flip it to black and white. Now, you can do it in camera, and I really don't recommend that because you have no control over the final outcome. But if you go ahead and shoot in RAW, bring it into your editing software, then you can go ahead and edit to your heart's desire. Now, if you shoot in JPEG, well, you're actually working with an image that has already been edited. The camera did the original edit, and you lose information when you do that. When a camera takes and converts an image from RAW to JPEG, it's throwing away some of that information. A RAW image has 4,096 tonal ranges per channel, I believe, where JPEG has 256. That's a big difference. That's a lot of editing power that you lose if you don't shoot in RAW. So shooting in RAW gives you that extra editing capability. Always use low ISOs. That way you get a good, clear, clean image. If you want to add grain back, you can. That's always an option. Composition. You cannot rely on color to lead your eye around. You must use shapes, tones, and of course, textures. And that's one of my favorite things. Shoot in color. Again, while cameras can shoot in black and white, always shoot in color to be able to give you the best options. And when to shoot. Many photographers prefer to shoot white balance and low contrast situations. So overcast days, great time to shoot. Winter, like I said, is a great season for black and white. Just a quick question. How many people do embrace the winter months and stuff like that for a lot of their black and white images? It's kind of, if you got your camera on, wave your hand around. So hopefully you're waving your hand. If not, that's a great time to get out there. Another time that I like shooting black and white is when, if you're looking at an image and realistically it's monotone. A good example of this, a lot of people love going into the mountains in the summer and shooting. What is everything? Green. You have blue skies and green mountains. It's pretty much monotone, except, for the blue and the green. So then you've got to rely on something else to really snazz up that image. To me, that's black and white. You know, try to get an active sky or something to really turn that image around a little bit. Portraits, like I said, portraits are great for having black and white portraits are great for impact. They're classic, and to me, they have an emotion to them. If you look at a lot of the like National Geographic images, so many of those were black and white because you could capture the emotion of that situation. It seems to be better in black and white than in color. Also, it kind of focuses you more towards the subject if it's black and white, in my mind. Black and white photos just lends itself to be dramatic type images. Now, this image here, this is nothing, you know, fancy or anything like that. This was actually during a studio teaching session. One of the students, I had him come up and we set up the lights and shot this image. To me, this ended up being pretty good. It seems like it's got some emotion to it and stuff like that. Realistically, it's just a shot of one of my students. So, you know, it turned out pretty good. Landscapes. So this is what a lot of us like shooting. And some of the things to look at when you're shooting landscapes, one would be active skies. So this particular image, and I've lost the photographer who did this, but I love this image. Now it's a little distorted here as a background for this shot, but you can see this was a long exposure. We've got the active skies up here. We've got the leading lines running through here. We've got shooting from a low profile shooting up. This just has so many wonderful aspects to the composition. And this is something, you know, given the right area or the right shooting, you know, any of us could really do. So you just need to, you know, be on a tripod. You need to have a darker type day so you can get that longer exposure. You know, and right now, you know, as we have some of these summer storms starting to come through, might be a good time to try to capture some of this. Just don't hold your tripod up while any lightning storms are passing through. That could be bad. But yeah, active skies, good contrast between blacks and whites. I've noticed a trend, not particularly one that I like, but a lot of people seem to be doing, our flattened image, an image that doesn't have a lot of contrast between highlights and shadows. You know, chocolate and vanilla. Some people like it, some people don't. Personally, I like very high contrast images. Embracing textures, shapes, and patterns like we talked about before. You can see the wonderful textures in these posts here that this is picking up. Of course, cross lighting, that's what's giving us those wonderful textures. Consider the foreground. You know, so many times we take pictures, the foreground is very blank and everything is in the middle or background. So here we've got foreground, we've got middle ground, we've got background, we've got, this encompasses everything. That's why I love this image so much. And a polarizing filter. You know, if you're going to have one filter out there, a polarizer is really nice. And, you know, I don't know if you all, when you have some of your outings or something, have had a outing where someone went over filters and things like that. If not, it probably would be a good outing to have, because polarizing filters, like I said, if you're going to have one, that's it. It's going to give you better contrast. It's going to take the glare out. It's going to give you darker skies. It just does make a huge difference normally having a polarizing filter. Plus, if you're shooting around water or anything like that, we have so many wonderful waterfalls here in Georgia, it will take the glare off those. So it's something to think about. So consider using a filter. And like I said, back in the olden days, okay, people always used filters because it would enhance their images. So back I always had at least two filters. I had a red filter and I had a green filter back when I was shooting film. The red filter is the go-to for bold and dramatic effects. Not only does it give you your photo a more intense feel, but using this type of color eliminates any haziness. Okay. Now, it's not a magic filter. It's not going to get rid of Georgia August haze, but it will help. Yellow filters. Many people like to bring out the clouds in their images. Use this type. The yellow filter darkens blues, but reproduces greens and other colors in lighter shades. So the yellow filter is really good for bringing out those clouds. By the way, this background image, these are a group of crab pots. Again, from the Eastern Shore, the Chesapeake is known for its blue crabs, which I'm hoping I'll get when I go up there. But this was just a wall of crab pots. It was off season. Orange filters. Orange filters are more dramatic than yellow, but less so than red. The sky will take on a dark tone when recorded in blue skies, thanks to its strong contrast. And then green filters are used almost exclusively for scenes that contain a lot of green. Landscapes. A green filter will allow leaves to appear more natural with a lighter feel to them. Okay, so let's kind of look at some images here. So this is, and I didn't shoot this. This was something I found online. So here's the original image up at the top here. Then the image to the right of it is just that image flipped to black and white. Okay, there's not a lot of contrast. It really is not that exciting, but there it is. By using an orange filter, we immediately see that we're picking up the clouds a little bit better. It's darkened the water in the pool area and it's darkened the water out in the ocean. So it's giving us more contrast. As it said in the thing, the yellow, look what it's doing for our clouds. It's very similar to the orange, but not, it's a little more subtle than the orange. I cannot see. There we go. Yellow, blue, I guess if you use those in combination, we have that. The blue was one thing that really just totally blew my mind. Of course, it's kind of filtering the blues out, and you can see it is a very bland, has almost no contrast to it at all. So definitely in this situation, a blue filter would not be desirable. The red filter, which a lot of people use, gives us a really nice look, and the green filter really darkened everything. That's maybe a little overkill depending on what you're looking for. Now, could you do this stuff in Photoshop? Yes. You can kind of filter things the way that you want in Photoshop, but I enjoy trying to do things in camera. To me, it looks better, and I just like that look a little bit more. Okay, so if you're from this side of the neighborhood, you may know this place. This is in Palmo. It's this little general store. This was that shot in color. I was looking for a red-ish building, and the image next to it is just flipped to black and white. There is no editing here at all, none. That is just a flip to black and white. In fact, the first image was no editing. It was just straight out of camera. So what if we use some of these filters? How can that kind of change things? So here on the left is the image without any filters. On the right, we're using a red filter. And again, this is not edited. So this is right fresh out of camera. It's a little dark. It could be brightened up a little bit, but I wanted to show you what it would look like right out of camera. Notice off the top, like the RC Cola is very flat now. The red is being taken out of that. But the skies turned really dark, very dramatic. And honestly, I love that look. To me, I really like the red filter in this. It gave a good look to this. Now, as far as editing, you've got to remember that your entire image is red now or have red tones. So it makes editing the image with like black and white sliders, something I'm going to show you here a little bit later. It's a little different process if you're shooting with filters like we are here. So again, same image. Now we're using a green filter. You can see we've got the RC now is looking nice and dark. The sky is a little bit still dark, looks much nicer. To me, the green filter here definitely worked well. This wall could use a little bit of brightening, but again, no editing in this image. But just putting that filter on there definitely made a huge difference in the image, and to me, much nicer contrast. So again, summary here, we're, one thing I want you to think about is start maybe thinking about bringing those old filters back out and using them on a digital camera. It really can give you some interesting photos. It's right out of the camera, and to me, it just looks great. So your subjects, as far as summary here, using black and white photography normally makes your subject really stand out since you're not using color. Portraits look timeless, which is one thing I love about black and white. Gives more emotion or an intimate nature to the photo. Contrast, having light and shadows in the photograph makes it interesting. Again, I like having a lot of contrast in my image. Again, chocolate and vanilla, it's whatever you like. Shapes and textures are the things that you will really look at in your black and white images. Perspective. Now, this is for black and white or color. So many of us, when we go to take our pictures, what do? We pick up our camera, we hold it in front of us, and we stand there and take the shot. Well, what if you got on the ground like that landscape? Or what if you try to get up on top of something, even your car, to get a different height and to look at things a little bit differently? It definitely makes for some interesting shots. Manual shooting in full manual exposure. This is almost a must for black and white images, especially if you know anything about the zone system, which we talked about one time before. But in shooting manual, you want to make sure your exposures are tack on. And sometimes that means not centering the needle. So you have to be open to adjusting depending on the reflective values of what you're shooting. Again, always shoot in color. Think about shooting with a polarizer. When shooting around reflective surfaces such as water, leaves, the polarizer is going to cut those reflections. When color is removed from the photo, these specular highlights can be distracting to their overall composition. And meter gray, the zone system. Remember, your meter is always metering for 18% gray. So if you're shooting something that is, not gray, it's going to try to meter and get it to that gray. That's why you can't always center the needle. Think about the zone system. Questions?
I think you've covered, but I got one simple question. You're talking about making all these changes or not making them in Lightroom or whatever you use. Are you saying take the filter in the field with you, take a picture with the red filter, take a picture with the green filter, take a picture with the yellow filter, and then flip it to black and white?
Yes. So just like the old days,
Okay.
put your filters on your camera out in the field. And when you bring them into your editing software of choice, you'll edit normally, but the sliders won't work the same. And I'll show you what I mean by sliders here in a second when we get into working with the post-processing. the sliders aren't going to work the same because your image is either going to have a red tone to it, or a green tone to it, or a yellow tone to it. It's going to look funny in color, but once you flip it to black and white, they look tremendous.
Okay.
Okay. Let's go ahead. I'm going to share my screen again and flip over to Lightroom. If I can find it. Why has it got it all separated? Let's just do that. We'll do this and close that and bring up Lightroom. Can you see Lightroom now?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to go through my process of how I edit images. So these images right now are unedited. You can see this, the front of this truck is terribly underexposed. So I'm going to go through what I normally do to edit my images in black and white. So starting off with this truck image, it's not a bad image. It's nothing spectacular, but I just thought this old truck was kind of cool looking. This was out in the marsh, as you can tell. And I kind of cheat to begin with. And some of you might do this. Some of you might think this is awful. I start off with clicking on auto. I just want to see what the computer's going to do with it. And it's going to get some of my settings and stuff started. And that's what I really want. So once I get that done, I'm going to go ahead and set my, what's called my clipping alert for my shadows and my highlights. Okay. I don't know if you've ever used these controls up here at the top. One's for showing your clipping for your shadows. The other one's showing your clipping for your highlights. Well, as you can see, I'm seeing blue here. So that means I've already got blacks on this. So actually, I need to flip this over to black and white first. So there we go. So I just take this and I change it from color over to black and white. And so I've got my clipping alert on. So I've got an area that is black. Now I need my whites. So normally I would start off by either moving my black slider, which I've got my blacks, so I'm good there. Now I need to move my white slider, and I'm going to move this up. And there we go. I'm starting to see some reds in here. One of the biggest problems most people have in their black and white images are they're not black and white. They're shades of gray without those black and whites being there. Now, again, chocolate and vanilla, some people like it like that. I like having blacks and whites in my images. So once I get that, I go ahead and turn these clipping alerts off. Now I'll go and make other adjustments, whether I want the shadows up or down. And this, because the front end of this truck was so dark, bring those shadows up on that. My black and whites are set. Highlights are set pretty well. And now I'm going to bring my contrast up. Let's see what that does. I don't want to do it too much, just kind of see where it goes. Definitely want to bring my texture up just a little bit and clarity up just a hair. And again, I don't want it too much. If you overdrive your images, a lot of times that introduces noise into your image. So you don't want to overdrive them with, huge changes in your image. So now that I've got all that done, that's kind of my base image. Okay, that looks pretty good. Exposure actually maybe is just a hair too high. I'm going to bring it down just a touch. There, to me, that looks better. Now, again, a lot of this is just to your eye, what your eye is looking for, what your eye likes. So I've got all that. Now I go to my black and white sliders. And this is what I was talking about. If you use a filter, like a red filter or something like that, yeah, that's your black and white sliders are not going to work the same. But when you don't use any filters, these black and white sliders can really do something. So I basically go through and see what each one's going to do. So like this one is affecting the truck. We know the truck was reddish. So I can either darken areas of it or brighten areas of it. Then we look at orange. The truck was actually more orange than anything. So you can see I can darken this up or brighten it up a little bit. Actually, if I darken it a little bit, it brings out some more texture in this. So I kind of like that. The yellows, let's see what the yellows hit. The yellows are hitting all the marsh grass. Okay, so bringing it up, I actually like it dark, a little bit darker. Okay, greens, let's see what that hits. There's not a lot of green. Oh, the grass in the foreground and stuff. That's probably good about where it is. By the way, if you don't know this, if you double click on the front item over here, it resets it to 0, if you didn't know that. Aqua, I don't really think there's much aqua in here. Now the blues should hit the sky. Let's see what happens here. Yeah, now as I drop that down, look what that's doing to the few clouds that I have here. It's kind of darkening the sky a little bit. That looks much better. Purples, it's hitting the sky a little bit. So we'll do that. And magentas, again, not a lot of changes. So we're just going to recenter that. And there's my kind of my final image. That's what I go through. It's not a lot of steps, but it does make a huge difference in the image. If I take and turn this off, look at the difference between working with these sliders. So there it's off, there it's not. It made to me, a pretty big difference in this image, how it looks by using some of these black and white sliders. Okay.
Mike, would you ever use the auto in that?
So I will sometimes see what the computer will do, but I want to be honest with you. Auto in that particular feature normally doesn't work really well. So honestly, I just assume go through it, each slider, see what area it's changing, and see what it does to my overall image. Now, one thing I definitely like, and anybody that really knows me, they know that I'm bad about this, is I like vignetting. So probably a light vignette on this image to darken the image, to bring you into the image a little bit. To me, that makes a nice change. So let's look at another image. We'll go through the same process. So this is an old Target ship, and this ship means quite a bit because my whole family, cousins, uncles, stuff, we've been fishing around this since we were all children. It's out in the Chesapeake. And a couple of years ago, we went out and looked at it again. There's not much left of it, but it was still kind of cool to look at. So again, we're going to start off clicking auto. And you see that made a huge difference in the image. I mean, we can actually really see what's going on with the image now. And go ahead and flip it to black and white. That's not a bad image. We'll hit our two clipping alerts for our shadows and our highlights. You can see we've got a little bit of black here, not much. So let's bring that black down and darken those up a little bit. That looks better. Now let's look at our whites and bring those up. That looks good. Now we've got the whites in the proper area, the blacks in the proper area. This looks starting to look like a nice black and white image. The brightness of this looks good. Let's check the contrast here. Oh, bring that contrast up a little bit. It does make it nice. There's subtle changes. You know, a lot of people go, oh, if you go into Photoshop and stuff, you're, totally redoing the image. And it's not so. Well, if you're flipping into black and white, but a lot of times it's just subtle little changes. And I don't know if you've ever seen this. I've seen images that were taken back, in the film days, and they would have all these circles in like the negative, you know, 2/3 or a plus 1/2 all over the image. These famous images that we've looked at, our entire life. Well, what they were doing was setting that up for the printer to print certain areas brighter or darker. It's doing nothing different than what we're doing in Photoshop. They were doing it way back then, but they were doing it in the print room. So yeah, all this looks pretty good. Let's look at our texture. Again, we're going to bring that up just a little bit on the clarity, just a touch. That's fine. Now let's see what our sliders can do for us. And I'll go ahead and I've already got this turned off. Good. So we'll start off with the reds. Now this has got a lot of rust in it, so we'll see what that does. You can see it darkens or lightens the rusty area of the ship. Light having a little bit brighter brings out the detail a little bit more. Oranges are going to hit the same area. Now, I don't want to bring it up so much that I start losing the detail out here. So it's really pretty close where it is. Yellows. Well, if I darken the yellows, look what's happening on the hull of the ship. It's giving it some more detail in the rusty areas. I kind of like that. That's looking good. Greens, darkening the water a little bit. We'll go ahead and do that. Aquas, water is darkening a little bit, not much. Now the blues are going to hit our skies again. Let's see what that does for us. Oh, wow. Now look at that. Now look at that sky that we didn't have before. By darkening those blues up, now we have this gorgeous sky with all this contrast there. It's made a huge difference in the image. And we'll hit our purple. The purples are actually hitting the sky again a little bit. Magenta's really not doing much. So look at the difference in the image now. That's without the sliders, with the sliders. That's night and day better on that image. How many people, and you can speak up if you'd like, how many people are using these sliders now? Is it many?
No.
No? Well, if, after this meeting, and I'm sorry I can't, stay for the whole meeting to answer more questions, but if anyone has any questions on doing this, please contact me and I'll step you through this process again. Let me show you a portrait. Okay, so this is a senior shoot that we did. A senior, like high school, not like me senior. So we start off auto as normal. Now darkened it up a little bit more than what I wanted. So let's bring that up right off the bat. We'll go ahead and click on black and white. And I like this look. This looks pretty good. So let's get our sliders or our clipping alert going here. So I don't have any blues or any reds right now. Let's start off with the blues. Let's darken our blacks. There we go. It's showing up in the hair here a little bit. Now, I don't want to darken this hair too much because I don't want to lose the texture in it. Let's check our whites. We're going to bring this up right on the nose. We're going to drop it down just a little bit. And there we go. We've got our whites and our blacks now. Now we've got a nice, it's giving us good contrast between the highlights and the shadows. We'll check our texture and clarity. Now this is a portrait. I'm not going to touch texture and clarity on this. I don't want to enhance any possible, now she doesn't have any, but any possible skin imperfections. So I'm going to leave those alone in this particular image. So let's get down to our sliders again. We'll start off with reds, and this is huge. Look what it's doing to her shirt. So by dropping this, look how now she is really standing out better because the shirt is darker and making her pop more. So I like that. Let's look at orange. The orange is adjusting her face a little bit. Actually, I like it a little bit brighter. Yellows, again, touching the skin, just the hair, not that much. Greens, no real changes for green. Aqua, no real changes for aqua. Blues, he's darkening those stairs just a little bit. Purples, oh, that's hitting that dress again. I think we've got the dress pretty much where we want it. Magenta, well, that darkens that dress even more. Just a touch. And let's go ahead and do a medium vignette on this. Without the color adjustments, are the black and white sliders, and with. Mainly the shirt is what we ended up touching here. But what it did is it made the facial area pop out. We're going to do one more real quick. I know a lot of people love photographing birds and stuff. Click auto to get started. I want to brighten this up just a hair. Now, this is not a real sharp image. I actually shot this from on board the boat while it was moving. So we're going to flip it to black and white. Turn on our clipping alert. Well, we've already got some blacks there. I'm actually going to enhance those just a little bit. We're going to bring those whites up until we get that in the bird. There we go. We're good there. Now this, especially since it's the bird, I want to see the texture in this. I want to see the texture in the water. We're going to bring the texture and clarity up. Now, sliders should do a lot for this. So let's start with the reds. We're getting nothing for red. Let's look at orange. It's darkening that crab pot behind the bird a little bit, but not enough to make a difference. Look at yellows. That's darkening that water. And I like that. Greens and darken the water a little bit more. It's going to make the bird stand out. Aqua. Giving a little bit more darkness to the water. Now the blue, that was nice. Look what it's doing to the bird. It's giving me some shadow here and giving me some definition that I didn't have before. Magenta really didn't do it, or purple didn't do anything. Magenta really didn't do anything. So let's look at our image before and after. Darken that water and stuff, made our bird stand out more. That looks pretty good. And again, add a medium vignette to that. Again, it's not a real sharp image, but it gives you an idea of what you can do as you are editing through these. It's real simple. You start off auto, then you flip to black and white. You set your clip points for your shadows and your highlights. Then you go through, you make sure all these others are where you want them. I didn't actually adjust the contrast, but we'll add a little bit there. The big thing are your black and white sliders right there. That is what makes the image totally different from if you're just doing the above basic changes. Questions?
I will be a problem. Have you got possibly one picture where you took it through a red filter or through a green filter? And
yeah, let me see if I've got those on this. Actually, no, I don't. I'm sorry. I normally use my desktop computer, but I had all this on my laptop for the demo when I did it over at the other presentation. So I apologize. I don't have that.
Okay. But still go through the same procedure.
Same procedure, but the sliders are going to be different. They're going to be more limited because your image is going to be either more green, more yellow, more red than it normally would. So that's what the big change would be.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Instead of using a filter, have you tried to taking the green or the red channel only and editing that channel as black and white?
No, that would be the other way of doing that. You could just go into the different channels and do the editing. Again, I'm trying to do as much stuff in camera as possible. But no, that is another option.
Mike, this is Jim Farley. I guess basically what they did in the first part is sort of taken us back into the analog era with digital.
That's exactly what I did. And I'm not the one who thought of that, by the way. I was actually, I got an email or something, and I went and saw this video, and this guy's like, if you're not doing this for your black and white images, you need to start again. And I mean, I had the original filters that I used back in my film days, you know, probably 30 plus years ago. I had the same filters. I used square filters for my filtering system. So I was able to use them again for these images. So it was kind of neat. And it just, to me, it just makes the, for one thing, it's done in camera, which I like. And it brings back some of that film nostalgia, being able to shoot with those different filters. By the way, you a ham operator?
Yes, I am. KG4FXV.
I thought so. I used to do some when I was in the Civil Air Patrol on 2 meter.
Mike, what's your thought on using the profile underneath the auto button? Do you ever do any of those?
Honestly, no, I don't. I've seen some videos and stuff where people are using those profiles. That's something I probably need to investigate. It's one of those things when I get around to it.
Mhm.
But I have seen where that does make a difference in some of the images. Just haven't had a chance to really play with it. The whole thing with Photoshop and Lightroom and or whatever product you use, there's so much out there. There's so many tweaks and there's so much different stuff you can do. That's why I try to keep my stuff more basic. My whole thing is I shoot a lot of portraits and weddings. That, you know, to this day, I've been doing this. My very first job out of high school was a wedding photographer. So I've been doing this a while. And I've gotten, I think the most that I ever did were I had 2 other shooters with me, and one of them got snap apping. We had like over 3,000 images. And I did them all in 8 hours in Lightroom, edited them all. So I like to keep things simple. I have, you know, this process I go through, and you know, I'm not into a lot of other stuff. Now, once I get what I call my basic edits done, if I have certain images that I really like, I'll tag those. And then I might go back and do some special editing and stuff on those and play with different things. But yeah, a lot of my editing though is I try to keep it as basic as possible.
Any more questions? Well, I think, Mike, we thank you for what you've gone through tonight, and we will let you go and get ready for your father. Go visit your father, and I wish him well.
Well, I thank you so much. And again, thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy doing these. And if there's anything else that you'd like to go through, if you want to have, like I said, a little filter day or something like that, where we go out and kind of play with filters, sometime, just let me know. I would be glad to do something like that.